My name is Rachel Moore. I used to work as a virology research assistant at an international biomedical facility. My specialty was in field diagnostics, mostly identifying emerging strains of viruses in low-resource zones. That's what I was trained for. That's what I signed up for. But I never signed up for this. 3 years ago, it was just supposed to be a long-term station assignment. Dr. Marcus Harris, the lead of our department and my mentor, had been given a multi-year contract to conduct deep clinical vaccine trials. We were told the site would be isolated for security reasons. High-value testing, sensitive IP, limited contact. I didn't question it. None of us did. There were 5 of us on his team. Leah, a quiet, brilliant molecular specialist. Jonas, our data guy, used to joke about quitting and becoming a chef. Isha, the clinical monitor, detailed and skeptical. Daniel, the systems engineer, always calm. And me. We were flown in under heavy NDA, blind routes, no phone signal. The island had a secure facility, heavily guarded. It felt strange, but I assumed it was normal. I've never been so wrong in my life. Patient Z04. The trial was for a cancer vaccine. That's what we were told. One of the first human volunteers, subject Z04, was a 38-year-old male with a terminal brain tumor. No family, no record of mental health issues. He signed the consent forms. Was calm, cooperative. For the first few days, everything seemed routine. Blood draws, vital tracking. He responded to the injections with mild fever and some disorientation. Typical. Then one morning, he didn't answer when we called his name. His eyes had turned milky white overnight. Pure white, like glass fogged over. He sat up, tilted his head to sounds, but said nothing. When we asked questions, he didn't blink, didn't flinch. Then he lunged at Leah. Fast. She backed up in time, but he almost got her arm. We were stunned, frozen. It didn't feel real. We sedated him, strapped him to the bed, but his vitals, no heartbeat, no pulse, no respiration, but still moving, still looking. He was dead, but not. We monitored him for weeks, then months, then an entire year. His muscles began to atrophy, skin rotted in places, his fingertips turned gray. We changed restraints multiple times because of decay and stress on the body. But he never stopped moving. He responded to noise, sudden claps, dropped objects. He turned his head, he opened his mouth, and he bit. We tested feeding responses. Out of desperation, we gave him raw pork. He ripped through it like a wild animal, ripped it to the bone and sucked the marrow. Dr. Harris was speechless. He ran every possible test, MRI, CT scan, EEG, nothing. Brain dead, but something still there, something primal. Jonas said it first, half laughing, half serious. We're not studying a patient anymore, we're babysitting a predator. We kept the patient in a locked isolation unit. Thick steel doors, coded security, minimal contact. Then one evening, during a storm, everything changed. The wind howled like it was mourning something. Rain slammed against the reinforced glass panels above the hallway, rattling the frames. A low thunder rumbled overhead, and the lights flickered twice before stabilizing. We were running on backup generators again, standard procedure during a tropical storm. We didn't think much of it. That was our first mistake. A junior staffer, Miller, had been assigned to handle the evening feed, routine task. Push the meat cart down the restricted corridor, slide it through the steel chute into Z04's chamber, and walk away. I remember seeing him through the control room monitors, his movements awkward, shoulders stiff. First week on level 4, still eager to impress, still green enough to believe protocol could protect him. He stopped at the containment cell, unlocked the chute, and slid the tray forward. The meat, a slab of raw beef, pink and dripping, squished against the metal with a wet slap. But then he hesitated. Why the hell did he lean in? Maybe he thought the tray hadn't gone all the way through. Maybe he wanted to check the restraints. Maybe he just wanted to see it up close. Z04 had been motionless for days, rotting, quiet, compliant. We'd all started to believe it was losing energy, dying even. But Z04 wasn't dying. It was waiting. Without warning, its right arm, gray, cracked, and partially decomposed, snapped forward through the slit. The shoulder restraint tore loose with a horrible metallic screech. The elbow dislocated instantly, popping out with a squelch. Bone cracked, skin tore. The arm broke off, completely severed, but still moved. Fingers clenched around Miller's shirt like it had a mind of its own. Miller didn't even scream at first, just gasped. Then Z04 lunged, its mouth, filled with jagged, blackened teeth, clamped down on the side of Miller's neck. There was a crunch, then a gurgle. Then blood. Hot, thick, pulsing blood sprayed across the walls. We all heard it, not from the speakers, from down the corridor. A scream that turned the marrow cold, pure terror, raw pain. It didn't stop immediately. It choked, broke, then stopped altogether. By the time we got there, Miller was sprawled on the floor. His body twitched. His eyes were glassy, his skin pale. The severed arm of Z04 still clung to him like a parasite, fingers dug deep into muscle and fabric. The other staff pulled him away while security stormed in. Reyes and Lang armed and shouting. Z04 was snarling, wrist bone jutting out like a blade, still trying to reach for us, even restrained. It took everything we had to reattach the other restraints and seal the chamber. The door hissed shut behind us, locking with a heavy clang. Miller was bleeding out fast, chest rising shallow, eyes wide, but strangely empty. He wasn't panicking, wasn't even trying to speak. Just gone. We called for medevac, but 5 minutes passed, then 10. His fingers twitched. Lang noticed first. He's moving. At first, we thought it was post-mortem reflex, but then his whole body jerked. Limbs stiffened. His spine bent backwards with a violent crack, and then he snapped up, like someone yanked him from the dead with invisible strings. His mouth opened wide and he snarled. Eyes rolled back, white and veined with black. Blood poured from the hole in his throat, but he didn't seem to notice or care. He lunged, straight at Reyes. They slammed into the wall with a deafening thud. Miller sank his teeth into Reyes's arm. Deep. Flesh tore. Reyes screamed and tried to pull free, but Miller was relentless. It wasn't an attack. It was feeding. Lang tackled them both, screaming, "Get it off him!" We barely got Reyes loose. He was white as a sheet, clutching his arm, breath ragged. Miller thrashed on the ground, snarling like an animal. We had no time. We shoved him back into Z04's chamber and sealed the door again. The two of them, the thing that used to be Miller and Z04, just stared at each other in the flickering light. Neither moved. Reyes sat in the hallway, shivering. Lang was sobbing quietly, rocking on his heels. One of the techs tried to stop the bleeding, but the flesh around Reyes's wound was already turning gray. Less than 5 minutes later, Reyes vomited. Not bile, not blood, something thick, black, like oil bubbling out from a cracked engine. His veins bulged beneath his skin. His eyes fluttered, then rolled back. His pulse spiked erratically, then flatlined. He collapsed in the hallway, convulsing, then motionless. We stared at each other. No one said a word. We had protocols, quarantine measures, but none of them accounted for this. They moved Reyes into the adjacent room. one of the sealed medbays. He was dead. His eyes had stopped responding, heartbeat gone, brain activity flat. By every measure, he was a corpse. But something wasn't right. 10 minutes later, I came back to check, and he was sitting up, not slowly, not groggy, like a man waking from a nap, like a machine rebooting. His eyes were open, milky and twitching, his head turned toward the glass, and for a moment, he just stared. Not like someone looking through a window, but like he was trying to see me. His jaw dislocated with an audible snap, and he started laughing. Not with joy, not even with madness, but with hunger. He started banging his head against the reinforced glass, not once, not twice, over and over, faster and harder, thud, 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 skull meeting glass with such force that crimson cracks started spiderwebbing across his forehead. His skin split open, blood smeared the glass like red paint, streaking down in long, thick trails. His mouth was open, jaw hanging slack, but no words came out. Just a deep, low snarl, wet and raw. Not human, not mimicry, pure animal, pure hunger. His eyes twitched in different directions, like something inside was struggling to sync with the body it had stolen. Then, suddenly, he stopped, face pressed against the glass, breathing fogging up the pain. He grinned through broken teeth. Strings of black saliva oozed from his lips, tracing down the window. Panic. We backed away from the feed, rushed into the main control room like rats fleeing fire. All monitors were up. Multiple chambers, multiple views, multiple things. 3 infected now, spread across 2 isolated rooms. But the worst part wasn't the number. It was how fast it all happened. 1 year of data, 1 year of non-reactive results. 1 year of secrets, of hypotheses, of silence. All of it became meaningless in a single night. It felt like a nightmare. But it wasn't. I watched it unfold in real time, sick to my stomach, skin crawling. Every screen showed something worse. In Chamber 2, one of the infected bit off the last 2 fingers of its own hand and began scratching symbols into the floor with exposed bone. In Chamber 5, another began laughing. A wet, gurgling laugh as its stomach began to inflate, pulsing like a balloon about to burst. Security scrambled into full lockdown. Emergency klaxons roared. Red lights spun across the ceiling. Doors slammed. Magnetic seals engaged. Dr. Harris, soaked in sweat, called an emergency meeting with the head of operations. We gathered in the briefing room under cold fluorescent lights that made everyone look like ghosts. Aisha was in the corner, arms wrapped around herself, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. Leah just stared down at her trembling hands. We had protocols, she whispered. We did everything right. Jonas staggered into the corner and vomited all over a stack of reports. No one moved to help. No one cared. Harris just kept pacing in front of the whiteboard, mumbling to himself, eyes bloodshot. His voice was hoarse. We have to understand it, he muttered. We must find the vector. There has to be something we missed, something in the sequencing. This doesn't make sense. But deep down we all knew. It was too late. Lock it down. That order came through the intercom with a hollow finality. All affected areas were sealed. Steel shutters slammed down. Oxygen scrubbers kicked in. Power rerouted. New rules came into place, rules that felt less like safety and more like a death sentence. No one enters or exits Level 3. No direct contact with the infected. No feeding attempts. Observation only. No interaction. No engagement. Just watch. We became prisoners in our own facility, trapped in sterile rooms lit by flickering halogens. surrounded by monsters we didn't understand, and worse, had created. Day and night blurred together. Cameras streamed constant footage of things no one should ever have to see. Grotesque experiments, bodies shifting in unnatural ways, eyes that didn't blink, teeth that grew where they shouldn't. They stopped responding like humans, stopped acting like animals. They were something new, something wrong. The silence between screams became more terrifying than the screams themselves, and still, Harris insisted, "Help is coming." Help has to come. But as the storm raged above us and the facility groaned under its own weight, we all knew the truth. Help wasn't coming. It never did. The breach started at 2:47 a.m. I remember the exact time because I couldn't sleep. Something had felt wrong for hours, the kind of wrong you can't explain, just feel. My heart had been thudding without reason. I kept glancing at the hallway lights outside my bunk. They were flickering again. Low hum. One blink. Then another. Then the alarm. A short, sharp blare that cut through the silence like a knife through skin. Not a drill. Not the usual system check. This was the real one. My stomach dropped. I bolted barefoot into the corridor, cold tiles under my feet, and sprinted to the nearest console. My hands trembled as I typed in my access. The monitor lit up. Containment Room 3. Glass. Shattered. Blood. Everywhere. It looked like a butcher's floor. One of the guards was slumped against the far door, his uniform soaked dark, head tilted too far to the side. His throat was just gone, ripped out, as if chewed. Inside the chamber, it was empty. The patient. Subject Z08 was missing. Number not missing. Loose. And he wasn't alone anymore. The island falls. We tried to initiate lockdown, but the system lagged. Every second felt like a countdown we couldn't see. Screams echoed through the corridors, first distant, then suddenly close. Too close. They moved faster now, faster than before, like their bodies had learned, adapted, like death no longer dulled them, it refined them. Their bones moved wrong, their skin stretched over too long limbs. But they were fast, too fast. I remember seeing Leah. She was just ahead of me outside the medical wing, punching in the override code. Her fingers were shaking. She got one number in. Then something dragged her to the ground, so fast I didn't even blink. There was no scream, just the sound of her skull hitting the floor. Then, teeth. Wet, crunching teeth. Blood sprayed against the walls in an arc. Her legs kicked, once. Then stopped. I froze. Something inside me shattered, but my body wouldn't move, wouldn't breathe. Then Jonas grabbed my arm. His eyes were wild. "Move!" We ran. I don't remember how I made it out. Only fragments, feet sliding in blood, sirens echoing in all directions, a nurse screaming behind a locked door, Daniel's face being dragged upward, eyes wide, mouth full of his own blood. Isha, gone. I never even saw what happened to her. Jonas pulled me into the elevator. The doors closed just as something slammed against the outer frame. A thud, then scratching, then silence. He had a boat key. I didn't ask how. Didn't care. We raced through the service tunnel beneath the West Labs. It smelled like mold and rust and old chemicals. Every sound echoed like footsteps behind us. I kept glancing back, certain they were following. We burst into the jungle. No flashlights, no path, just raw instinct and desperation. Branches tore our arms. Mud clung to our legs. I fell twice, nearly puked from the sprint. My lungs burned, my vision blurred. The only thing that kept me upright was the look on Jonas's face. Not fear, but resignation. Like he had already accepted death and was only moving because stopping meant pain. We finally reached the docks. The boat was small, a rusted motorboat meant for emergencies, fuel drums beside it, already prepped. I don't know how. Jonas never told me. Maybe he had planned this. Maybe he just got lucky. I looked back once. The jungle was burning. Flames swallowed the trees. The sky was glowing orange, full of ash. And somewhere beneath the roar of the fire, I swear I heard them, not screaming, laughing. The mainland. We drifted for 2 days. No compass, no map, just open sea. We rationed what little water we had. 8 stale protein bars meant for a 24-hour emergency kit. I sunburned so badly my skin blistered and peeled. My lips cracked. My tongue felt like paper. We were dehydrated, delirious. Jonas passed out on the 2nd day. I slapped him awake, screamed, shook him until he coughed and took another sip of rainwater we'd collected in a tarp. When the coastline appeared, just a sliver of land on the horizon, I wept. Not from relief, not even joy, just because I was still alive. We reached the mainland by sunset. Our legs barely worked. I could hardly walk. I collapsed on the beach and stared up at the sky. The sun was warm, too warm. But there were no alarms, no screams, no blood, just waves, just silence. But I knew, deep down, it wasn't over, not even close, until Genexus security found us. They were already waiting at the mainland port, lined up in full black tactical gear, no insignia, no names. Helmets reflective, silent. They didn't speak. They didn't have to. They pointed rifles at our chests, barked commands through muffled respirators, and separated us immediately. Blindfolds on. Hands zip-tied. The kind of operation that doesn't ask for cooperation. It expects obedience. No questions, no mercy. They loaded us into separate armored transports and drove us God knows where. I remember the sharp turns, the wet sound of tires on gravel, the quiet buzz of radio static in the front. Jonas called my name once. I didn't answer. When the blindfold came off, I was in a room made of glass, sealed, sterile, cold, an observation chamber in the Genexus mainland facility, level 4. I recognized it from internal photos I'd seen back at the island. White floors, white walls, one reinforced door, a speaker embedded in the ceiling, and a single chair bolted to the floor. For a while, nothing happened. Then the questions started. A woman in a gray suit stepped into view behind the glass. Blonde, efficient, no name badge. Her expression never changed. No warmth. No curiosity, just calculated control. She asked me the same 3 questions, over and over in the exact same tone. What happened on the island? How long ago did the breach occur? Did you touch the infected? I answered. I told her everything, every scream, every death, every second of blood and fire. I told her about Leah, about Aisha, about the things I saw behind the glass that shouldn't have been alive, about the bite, about the black sludge, about the laughing. She didn't react. Not once. After each session, I was left alone for hours. No windows, no clock. Just me and the hum of the overhead lights. Jonas was in the room next to mine. I only learned that when I pressed my ear to the vent and heard someone breathing. Familiar. He tapped on the wall once. I tapped back. I didn't know. God, I swear to God, I didn't know. He'd been scratched, somewhere between the lab and the boat, maybe in the tunnel, maybe in the jungle, maybe even before we escaped. I asked him on the boat, and he shrugged. It's nothing. Just a nail, he said, showing me his forearm. The wall caught me when we squeezed past the tanks. I'm fine. I wanted to believe him. He needed me to believe him, and I think part of him believed it too. But 24 hours into isolation, the screaming started. Not mine. Jonas's room. I pressed my face to the glass, hands shaking. I couldn't see anything, but I heard it. The wet sound of flesh hitting flesh, furniture crashing, a low snarl, guttural and wrong. Then gunfire, not controlled, not measured, panicked, 4 shots, then nothing. I backed away from the door, breath stuck in my throat. The next time I saw the woman in gray, her sleeves were rolled up. Blood had splattered across the bottom of her blouse. She didn't acknowledge it. "Jonas turned," she said flatly. "The guards didn't check his vitals before they entered." That was their mistake. The cameras caught the whole thing. Jonas lunging at the first guard with feral speed, tearing into his throat with teeth that shouldn't have been sharp enough. The second tried to run, slipped on blood, screamed. Jonas was on top of him in seconds, tearing, gnawing, feeding. The third guard barely hit the lockdown switch. The heavy door slammed down, cutting off Jonas's screams mid-snarl, but it was too late. Jonas was infected. And now, so was Genexus. The virus spread through the 3rd floor in hours. It didn't crawl. It cascaded. One moment I heard a voice over the intercom, someone in the security wing yelling something garbled, panicked. Then came the alarms. The blare was deafening. Emergency strobes blinked like frantic eyes. Then the boots, dozens of them, heavy, fast, thunderous, stomping in the hallway outside, shouting, barked commands, gunfire, a scream, another, and then silence. That silence hit harder than any explosion. It pressed in through the walls like the air had died, like the building had inhaled and refused to exhale. I locked my room from the inside, used everything I could find. The steel-legged desk, the wall chair, even parts of the bed frame I snapped off with raw fingers. I stacked them against the door until it wouldn't budge, even if rammed. I turned off the lights, sat in the corner, didn't move, didn't breathe loud. I'd learned this on the island. If you're quiet, they'll pass. I stayed there for 3 days. No food, no water, just fear and the kind of cold that seeps from the inside. I curled up in the dark, knees to my chest, listening too hard. Sometimes I heard footsteps out there, slow, shuffling, wrong. Sometimes groans. Once, something stopped in front of my door. It sniffed. Then it started scraping, long nails or claws, or maybe broken fingers dragging slowly along the metal. Then it knocked. Not hard, not frantic, just once, like it knew I was there, like it was waiting. I didn't move an inch, not even to cry. On the 4th day, the power died. The light beneath the door vanished. The vents stopped humming. The air grew stale. That was when I knew. The building wasn't just infected, it was dead. I waited, an hour, then 2. Nothing. Then I moved. Quietly, slowly. I removed the vent cover, screws loose from years of disuse, slid in. The shaft was tighter than I expected, cold metal against my ribs, dust clogging my throat. I crawled until I found the emergency stairwell, kicked the grate, dropped down. My knees nearly buckled when I landed. The echo rang up and down the stairs like a shout in a tomb. I held my breath. Nothing came. So I climbed, carefully, every footstep placed like a whisper. One flight, then another. No bodies, no blood, just abandonment and air that smelled like old wires and something sweet and wrong. At the base, I found the emergency exit. I pushed it open, slow as I could. The hinges creaked, loud enough to make my heart stop. I held my ground, waited. Then, sunlight. It hit me like a slap across the face. Blinding, harsh. I hadn't seen the sky in over a week. I didn't cry, I didn't smile, I didn't feel anything. I just walked. 2 blocks down, I found a police station. The doors were wide open, no barriers, no guards. Inside, it was chaos. The waiting room was full. People yelling, sobbing, holding each other. Some bleeding, some pale. A little boy sat on the floor with blood on his shirt, staring at nothing. The officers were slouched behind their desks, eyes sunken, hands shaking, phones ringing off the hook. No one answered. They looked broken, like they'd already lost. No one stopped me. No one asked who I was. I walked up to the front desk. My voice barely came out. "Can I use the phone?" A tired hand pointed to a receiver on the wall. I picked it up. Fingers numb, I dialed the number by memory. It rang. Once, twice. Then, "Hello?" It was him, my husband. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear and closed my eyes. I didn't speak. Not yet. Because for the first time in days, I felt something. I picked up the phone and dialed. "Hello?" "It's me," I said, barely above a whisper. "Rachel." "Rachel? Oh my God, where are you?" "District 8 Police Station. I walked here. I need you to come. Now." I scanned the room. Blood. Shouting. A crying child. A coughing officer. "Make it fast," I said. "Something's wrong here. People are turning." "I'm coming. 5 minutes. Don't move. Park across the street. Keep the engine running. If I'm not there, drive. Rachel, promise me." "I promise." I hung up, heart racing, found a staff bathroom, locked myself inside, and sat on the cold floor. 5 minutes passed. Then I heard it. 3 short beeps. 1 long. I stood up. Time to go. When his car rolled to the curb, I didn't wait. I ran, barefoot, unsteady, and threw my arms around him like I was clinging to the last solid thing in a sinking world. "Drive," I whispered. "Anywhere. Just drive." I sat there, shaking, clutching his phone like a lifeline. My fingers moved on instinct, dialing numbers I hadn't used in years. My parents, friends, names buried in memory. One by one, I told them, "Get out. Leave the city. Stock up. Go high. Lock everything." I expected disbelief. Laughter, maybe. Denial. But there was only silence. They'd seen something. A video, they said. A man in a mask, warning people, telling them to prepare, to run. It had gone viral. That video did what I couldn't. It made them believe me. We drove for hours, through empty stretches of highway, stopping only for gas, food, anything we could carry. Every store was half-stripped, shelves ransacked. People moved like ghosts, silent and frantic. Some stared at us, others gave tight nods like they already knew. We hitched a small trailer behind the car, filled it with dried rice, cans, bottled water, painkillers, a shotgun wrapped in a blanket. Then we drove toward the mountains. Higher, farther, away from cities, from signals, from everything. At the end of a narrow dirt road, we found it. An old mountain hotel with a rusted sign and 10 empty rooms, swallowed by pine and fog. We paid the owner double. He didn't ask why. We boarded the windows, reinforced the doors with furniture, hammered shut anything that looked like it could be pried open. And we waited. The silence in that place was heavy, smothering. No cars, no sirens, just the whisper of trees shifting in the wind and the creak of floorboards beneath our steps. Even with my husband beside me, even after a hot shower, a warm meal, and bolted doors, my body wouldn't unwind. My chest stayed tight. My ears strained at every sound. I wasn't resting. I was bracing, waiting for claws, for breath against glass, for screaming. The next day, my parents arrived. So did his parents, and Michael, his younger brother. When my mother stepped out of their van, arms outstretched before I even reached her, I broke without warning. We clung to each other, shaking. Neither of us said a word. That night, we sat in the dim hotel dining room, the overhead lights flickering like something alive. The tea was lukewarm, the air too still. I told them everything: the island, the laboratory, the breach, Jonas. My father clenched his jaw until the muscles twitched. My mother looked like she was shrinking inside herself. Michael didn't blink, just stared at the cracks in the table. Then I said it. This hotel won't hold, not for long. No one argued, they just nodded. It was my husband who found it. An abandoned prison, 15 kilometers north, hidden beneath overgrowth and shadows. I vaguely remembered the stories. Shut down years ago after abuse allegations, left to rot in the woods. Forgotten by time. To us, it was perfect. Thick concrete walls, perimeter fences once meant to trap, old watchtowers, multiple gated checkpoints, and best of all, only one rusted side entrance still open, barely wide enough for a person to slip through. I smiled when I saw it. Not from joy, from something deeper. A grim, anchored relief. This place could hold. One last night, at the hotel, we agreed to leave at first light. I told the hotel owner, Guillermo, quiet man, gentle voice. He raised an eyebrow when I told him our plan. A prison? He asked, amused. You're serious? It's what we need, I said. That place is cursed, haunted. Everyone here knows that. I didn't smile. So are hospitals. So are cities. So is everything now? He stared at me a moment, then gave a slow nod. He didn't say goodbye. A week later, they came. Guillermo and 3 of his staff from the hotel. They stood outside the gate at dusk, their car coated in dust, eyes darting like prey too long exposed. He called out my name, not loud, just enough for me to hear. I met them at the checkpoint with my husband and Michael, guns low but ready. I checked each one of them, slowly, carefully. No wounds, no fever, no clouded eyes, just exhaustion and fear. We let them in. There was room, more than enough, and I knew, in times like these, people were more than company. They were strength. Guillermo stayed silent for a long time after we let them in. When he finally spoke, it wasn't about the road or the mountains or even the prison. It was about the cities. They're gone, he said, eyes glassy. The town. They're war zones now, fires everywhere, gunshots at night. And the sound. His voice broke. He didn't finish the sentence. Another staff member, Rosa, whispered, "We saw people eating each other, biting, screaming, and worse, those who turned, they ran. Not shuffled, not limped. Ran." I closed my eyes. It was just like the island, just like Genexus. Michael turned on the old radio we kept in the control room. Static crackled, then a weak military broadcast came through, fading in and out like a dying breath. All remaining civilians advised to report to designated military shelters. All major roads compromised. Outbreak confirmed nationwide. Code Black protocols enacted. Repeat, Code Black enacted. We all stood there listening, every word like another nail in the coffin. Later that night, Guillermo told me what he'd seen on the drive north. He said there were checkpoints burned to the ground, barricades overrun, and convoys left smoking on the highway, blood streaked across windows, no survivors inside. The cities were evacuating. What was left of them? Government officials and scientists retreating into secure bunkers deep underground, military bases sealed off, only high-clearance personnel allowed in. Everyone else? Left to fend for themselves. We saw the footage later. Grainy clips salvaged from phones and drones. A woman running across a highway bridge chased by a pack of infected. A school bus flipped on its side, smoke pouring out. Small shoes scattered on the pavement. A soldier screaming into his helmet cam as the infected broke through the last line of defense behind him. The world hadn't ended in a bang. It ended in shattered windows, dead air, and an ocean of screams. And now, in the silence after, we waited. Each night we took turns on the watchtowers, scanning the tree line, listening for footsteps, for groans, for the shuffle of something that used to be human. The stars above were clearer than they'd ever been. But the world below? It was broken, and we were the last few trying to hold the pieces together. Days passed, then weeks. We fell into a rhythm, the kind that only survival can carve. We started farming in the old exercise yard, digging up the cracked concrete layer by layer until we hit soil. It was dry and stubborn, but it held. We planted fast-growing crops, potatoes, tomatoes, beans, anything that could last. Guillermo knew things about soil. Rosa had grown up on a farm. They became our lifeline. We used buckets to gather rainwater, boiled every drop, cooked in silence, and by evening everything went dim. No fires above shoulder height, no lights after sundown, no singing, no shouting, not even laughter. We spoke in whispers, moved in shadows. Noise attracted them. So did light. Michael mounted sheets of scrap metal over the higher windows, just enough to keep our silhouettes from being seen. "We're ghosts now," he said once, wiping sweat off his brow. "Better they never know we're here." At night we took shifts on the towers, rifles in hand, flashlights with the filters taped over red. I remember one evening, maybe our 10th day in the prison. I was on watch with Rosa. The fog was thick, clinging low over the fence. Then we heard it. A groan. Long, wet, almost human. Then another. Shapes moved in the fog. Slow, twitching figures dragging themselves along the tree line. One slammed into the outer fence and scraped its nails down the wire. Rosa gripped her rifle. "Don't shoot," I whispered, "unless it climbs." We watched in silence. 2, 5, 8 of them now, circling, sniffing, but the gates held, the walls held, they couldn't get in. Still, that night, no one slept. The next morning, Guillermo stood by the garden, his face pale. "They know we're here," he said. "Maybe not how to get in, but they know." "No," I told him, trying to keep my voice steady. "They're just wandering, looking for warmth, movement, sound." He looked at me, then glanced at the others gathered around. Rosa, Michael, my parents, my husband, silently sharpening a blade nearby. "You still believe that?" Guillermo said, voice low. "That they don't think? That they don't remember?" I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure anymore. More days passed. We dug trenches, laid tripwire, set up mirror signals between towers in case someone spotted movement. Michael carved wooden spikes and placed them near the old entrance, a grim warning for anything curious enough to try. Food grew, slowly. We rationed tightly. 1 full meal a day, small portions, no waste, no second servings, no matter who asked. My mother lost weight. So did I. Still, we stayed alive. One evening while we sat around the old cafeteria table with dim lantern light between us, Rosa said softly, "Do you think anyone's coming?" No one spoke. Then Michael said, "If they are, they better knock." A weak laugh rippled around the table. More habit than humor. Then silence returned, the kind that pressed down on your chest and made your ears ring. Every night, we heard them. Scratching at the fence, wandering just beyond the walls, sometimes growling, sometimes crying, voices that sounded like memories. We stayed inside and hoped the walls would hold one more night. Weeks blurred into months. The garden thrived. It surprised us all. How something green could grow out of ruin. Rows of potatoes swelled in the ground. Tomato vines climbed rusted fences. We found old seed packets in an abandoned farmhouse down the hill and planted squash, carrots, even herbs. Rosa cried when basil first sprouted. She said it reminded her of her grandmother's kitchen. We began drying food, salting, smoking, preserving in jars. Guillermo and my husband rigged a dehydrator from scrap fans and metal mesh. Nothing went to waste now. It made people smile again, just a little. The prison walls, once barely taller than a two-grown man, now reached 3 meters high. We scoured the valley for materials, steel bars, broken fences, old road signs, whatever we could carry. Michael and my father reinforced the perimeter with concrete poured into wooden frames, day after day, like building a fortress from the bones of a dead world. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were preparing. Then everything changed again. Rosa and my husband were clearing an old storage room near the east wing. It had collapsed partially from tree roots and age. They pushed aside a cracked shelf, expecting mice. But behind it, a sealed trap door, a hidden tunnel. It took us 2 days to fully uncover it, another day to reinforce the old ladder that led down. The air smelled like mold and stone. We lit torches, tied ropes, and descended one by one. It was narrow at first, like a forgotten crawl space, then wider and wider still. The tunnel stretched for hundreds of meters beneath the forest. We could feel it curve, dip, then rise. Cold water dripped from the ceiling. Eventually, it opened into a cavernous outlet at the edge of a lake. The light shimmered through the trees above. Quiet, undisturbed, and far in the distance, salt on the breeze. The lake connected to the sea. It was our way out, if things ever went wrong. We didn't celebrate, not openly, but we knew what we had to do. We started building a boat. Slow, careful work. Stripped wood from abandoned cabins, resin from pine trees. We used old prison doors as planks, sealed the gaps with melted plastic and rope soaked in tar. It wasn't pretty, but it would float. Inside the boat, we stored 6 rifles wrapped in oiled cloth, 4 machetes, several crates of canned food, water filters, a rolled solar panel, first aid kits, a radio, a notebook with maps and entries. In case we didn't make it, someone else might. It became our insurance, our secret ark. We hid it beneath a canvas tarp, camouflaged with branches and leaves. Only 5 of us knew the way, not because we didn't trust the others, but because hope was dangerous. Hope made people reckless, and we couldn't afford that. Still, every evening, when the sun dipped low and fog clung to the valley, I'd walk the path toward that tunnel. Just for a minute, just to breathe sea air, just to remember that we had a way out. We didn't know they had been watching us. Not until it was almost too late. 5 men, all of them lean and weather-worn, with hollow faces and the kind of eyes that had seen too much and felt too little. They had no women, no children, no softness left in them, just hunger and desperation. They must have followed the smoke from our chimneys, or heard the quiet hum of our generator on a still night, or just gotten lucky. Whatever it was, they found us, and they wanted in. We never saw them approach. Not during the day, but Rosa saw them at night. She had trouble sleeping, always had since her brother died early on, torn apart in front of her. That night, she sat by the eastern window, listening to the wind. That's when she saw movement, shadows slipping past the tree line, low to the ground, careful, slow. Then the rattle of the high perimeter fence, a sudden, desperate grunt, a body slammed against steel, hard, too hard. The clatter echoed through the trees like a gunshot, and in the distance came the groans, low, wet, familiar. Zombies. They came from the dark like a tide of rot. The intruders ran. We watched from the towers as the men vanished into the woods, chased by the stumbling dead. We never fired a shot. We never made a sound. But inside our walls, panic rose like floodwater. Rosa told us what she saw, her voice shaking, eyes wide with something between fear and fury. They were watching us. I saw their eyes. They were waiting. I stood, heart pounding like thunder behind my ribs. "They'll come back," I said. "Next time they won't be clumsy. They'll be ready, and they'll kill to get in." Silence. And then Guillermo stepped forward. "Then we don't wait," he said. "We move. Now." It was time. We gathered everyone into the common hall, faces pale, children clutching their parents, the old man who carved spoons with trembling hands, the pregnant woman who cried quietly. Even the dog, chained to a post near the gate, seemed to sense the change. Michael stood up. "There's something you all need to know." He told them about the tunnel, the hidden lake, the boat, murmurs, fear, hope, mistrust. "But we don't know where it goes," someone said. "I do," Guillermo answered. All eyes turned. "There's a ranger watchtower about 10 miles inland from that lake. It's old, forgotten. I fished near there with my father once when I was a boy. If it's still standing, it'll give us high ground, visibility, shelter." I looked around at the faces of the people I had lived beside, fought for, protected. I saw dread, and I saw something worse, exhaustion. They couldn't do this again. They wouldn't survive a siege. We packed quickly. Weapons were distributed, machetes, old rifles, sharpened metal poles. What little ammo we had was divided carefully. We only had 17 rounds left, just 17, enough for a warning or a mercy. Backpacks filled with dried food, water, medical kits, babies wrapped tight to their mothers' backs. A rope was tied between each pair of people so no one would get lost in the tunnel. Every soul knew the risk. Every footstep felt heavier than the last, but we couldn't wait for death to come clawing at our walls. Before we left, I stood at the edge of the watchtower, staring out at the forest where those 5 men had vanished. Somewhere out there, they were licking their wounds, plotting, waiting for a second chance. I whispered under my breath, "Not tonight." Then we descended into the dark. We couldn't all go at once. The boat could only carry so much, 10 people at most if we wanted to stay afloat and silent. That meant someone had to stay behind. It wasn't easy, deciding who would go first. Mothers with children, the sick, the elderly, they had to be in the first group, but we needed someone strong to guide them, someone armed. I volunteered. My voice didn't shake when I said it, but inside, my heart was already hammering. Rosa would come too, to row back. Her arms were strong, and her nerves stronger. She didn't flinch when we told her she'd have to come back alone through the tunnel and the lake. She just nodded. We moved through the underground tunnel in complete silence. Every echo felt louder than it should. Some of the children had to be carried. One woman quietly sobbed the entire time, not out of fear, but grief. She had left a brother behind in the prison, too sick to move. He had insisted. We couldn't afford to wait for him to die. The tunnel took us out to the lake. It shimmered under the moonlight, a cold, quiet mirror of the world above. The boat was cramped. Every time someone shifted, we held our breath. One wrong move, one splash, and we didn't know what might hear. But the night was kind, and we reached the other shore safely. The moment we stepped onto land, I looked back at Rosa. She was already pushing off, the oars cutting silently through black water. Her silhouette grew smaller with every stroke until the tunnel swallowed her whole. Then we turned. The first group followed the trail Guillermo described. Worn trees, an old hunting sign, the scent of pine and decay. And there it was, the Ranger Watchtower. Tall, faded, but still standing. We climbed up slowly, rifles drawn. No signs of life, no signs of the dead. Inside, we found maps, a radio with a cracked screen, dust-covered bunks and a steel ladder that creaked like it hadn't been touched in decades. But it would do. We secured the place quickly, blocked off the lower windows, posted lookouts, watched the lake for any movement. Hours passed. Then we saw the faint glow of a lantern. The second group. We rushed down. One by one, they emerged from the trees, dirty, sweating, smiling through the fear. Guillermo was the last to appear, his arms wrapped around the sick man who had somehow managed to survive long enough to make the trip. I saw Rosa among them, eyes gleaming under the moonlight. She had made it back and brought everyone with her. We were whole again. And for the first time in months, we allowed ourselves something dangerous. We smiled. We survived. Again. The Ranger Tower became more than a refuge. It became home. In the weeks that followed, we worked, not just to survive, but to build. "We can't be caught off guard again," Guillermo said one morning, running a hand over the faded map spread on the table. "We need a perimeter, high fence, barbed if we can find it." "We have tools, wood, some nails," Rosa offered, brushing dust off her pants. "Might take weeks, but it's doable." So we began. We cut down trees, hauled logs, lashed together walls of wood and scrap, piece by piece. Every day, someone stood watch with a rifle while the rest worked. Every hammer strike echoed across the forest like a heartbeat, steady, determined. No one complained. Even the kids helped, dragging brush and handing over tools. One morning, as the sun rose in misty bands through the trees, Hector came running. He was out of breath, grinning. "I found water," he shouted. "An old well, behind the tower." We gathered around it, cautious but hopeful. It creaked when we lowered a bucket, and when we pulled it up, clean water, cold and clear. We cried, drank, washed our faces for the first time in days with something other than sweat and melted rainwater. "This is a gift," I whispered. Guillermo clapped me on the back. "This is life again." We cleared a patch of land just beyond the fence line and planted what little we had left: beans, tomatoes, a few sprouting potatoes. Some seeds had been saved in jars, others scavenged from abandoned gardens we passed along the way. Rosa knelt in the soil with care, whispering to the earth like it could hear her. "Grow," she said. "Please, grow." And somehow, it did. Then came the baby. We cleared one of the upper rooms in the tower, boiled water, prepared towels and warm blankets. Lonnie screamed through the night. Her partner, Thomas, held her hand and sobbed, his forehead pressed to hers. I stood at the door with Rosa, both of us praying under our breath, and then a cry, thin, piercing, new. The entire room went silent, as if the world itself had stopped to listen. Thomas came out minutes later, eyes red, holding a bundle wrapped in white cloth. "It's a girl," he choked. "She's perfect." People rushed to see. Faces broke into tears. Guillermo removed his cap and placed it to his chest. Even the children were quiet, staring in awe. In a world broken by death, we had something living, new, a reminder that even here, surrounded by silence, ruins, and the undead, life still found a way. That night we lit a single candle, not too bright, not too long. We passed it around the group, each person whispering something into the flame, a wish, a name, a memory. When it came to me, I held it for a second longer. Then I looked at the baby, sleeping in her mother's arms. "I name you Hope," I said. No one argued. The previous group still managed to find us, but instead of 5, only 3 remained. 2 of them died after they took over the old prison. They thought they were safe. But one of them had wandered outside and didn't notice the zombie hiding in the bushes. He was bitten. Too scared to tell anyone, he went back in and kept quiet. 8 hours later, in the evening, while everyone was asleep, he turned and bit the man beside him. Chaos broke out. The remaining 3 managed to survive by jumping off the wall and fleeing into the forest. Later, they swam across the river and eventually stumbled upon the ranger tower. As the 3 men saw an opportunity again, they tried to sneak in under the cover of night. They managed to climb the tall wall, but they didn't know we had set traps. Deep trenches surrounded the perimeter now, masked by branches and leaves. They fell in, exhausted, cornered. We found them in the morning. They were filthy, bruised, and angry. When we asked what happened to the old prison and their missing companions, they told us everything. One of them had been bitten without telling anyone. He turned during the night and attacked the man beside him. The other 2 were bitten trying to help. The 3 survivors panicked and fled, jumping off the wall and running into the forest. They never even had the courage to kill their infected friends. Now, the old prison, the place we once made our home, was housing 2 undead, and possibly more. We didn't know what to do. We knew these 3 weren't good people. We remembered how they tried to take our refuge once. We knew they would try again. They were desperate, dangerous, and this time, we had families here, children, a baby. We debated what to do. Keeping them locked up wasn't an option, not with our limited space and supplies. If they escaped, it could cost us everything. If we let them go, they might return with more, like before. All logic pointed to one final, brutal solution. But no one wanted to say it out loud. The debate lasted 2 days. Arguments, silence, tears. Some of us still believed in mercy. Others just wanted to protect what we'd built. Then everything changed. One morning, my husband lowered food and water to them in the trench. One of the men suddenly lunged and grabbed his ankle, hard, yanking him toward the edge. We all froze. The man had a stick, sharpened, hidden, and he threatened to kill my husband if we didn't pull him out. The horror on my husband's face, the screams. Rosa stepped forward, calm, voice trembling just a little. "Please," she said, "we'll help you. Just don't hurt him." What he didn't know was that Rosa had a long metal spike hidden in her sleeve. As she approached, slowly, speaking gently, the man smirked. He loosened his grip just a bit. That was his mistake. Rosa struck. Fast and sharp, straight into his hand. He howled in pain, letting go. My husband scrambled back, safe. Looking down at them, we made our decision. We couldn't let this happen again. It was too close, too dangerous, too real. Ryan, a former police officer, stepped forward, quietly. His face was unreadable, but his eyes held something heavy, a weight none of us wanted to carry. "I'll do it," he said. No one replied at first. The silence was thick, suffocating. I looked around and saw people lowering their heads, some swallowing hard. Rosa placed a hand on Ryan's arm. He didn't flinch. He only nodded once, like a man who had already made up his mind. That night, while most of us pretended to sleep, eyes open, chests tight, Ryan did what needed to be done. He brought food to the trench one last time, the same way we always did. No one suspected anything, not even them. There was poison in it. An hour later, it was done. I saw him later, carrying the bodies in large burlap sacks, one over each shoulder, one dragging behind him. His boots made soft, crunching sounds on the dirt. He didn't speak to anyone. He didn't need to. He buried them just beyond the edge of the fence, near the eastern side, where the soil was soft and where the trees stood like sentinels watching silently. He marked the graves with nothing, just left them there, forgotten and unspoken. The next morning we gathered in quiet. No one asked questions, no one said their names. We only looked at Ryan. He nodded once, then walked away, to be alone. We were grateful, deeply, and yet we all felt the same sickness in our stomachs, the same ache. We had killed people, not out of rage, not for revenge, for safety, and still, it changed something in us. Something deep. But we were still alive. The children were safe. The fences still stood. And the baby. She slept in her mother's arms, not knowing how cruel the world outside had become. We had done the unthinkable. And in this world, that meant we had survived another day. We couldn't believe it. Another group with bad intentions had managed to find us. But unlike before, we were ready. We had spotted them 3 days earlier, lurking near the tree line, watching from a distance. We didn't make a move, just watched, listened, counted their numbers. 4 grown men, 3 young boys with their hands tied. That was enough to tell us everything. We knew they'd come closer, so we made preparations. Rosa and I led the effort to hide the children, the elderly, and the weak in a makeshift underground bunker we had quietly dug months ago, just in case. We covered the entrance with brush and leaves, gave them food, water, blankets. Then we waited. On the 3rd evening, they moved. The men tied the boys to trees near the outer woods, close enough to be seen but not close enough to reach quickly. A trap, a sick one. We all stayed quiet behind the fence, hearts pounding in our throats. The boys didn't make a sound, not a cry, not a whimper. Either they were used to this or too afraid to speak. As dusk fell and the light began to fade, the 4 men crept toward our perimeter, but they had no idea what waited for them. Beyond the fence, we had dug deep trenches hidden by branches and leaves, sharp stakes at the bottom, enough to stop anyone who tried to get too close. Rosa and I had already slipped out through the north exit, crawling low in the tall grass. We made our way to the boys while the others waited in silence, weapons ready. When we reached the trees, the boys turned to us, wide eyes, pale faces, but not a word. They understood. We quickly cut the ropes. The oldest boy mouthed, "Thank you." Then the 3 of them ran into the dark woods without looking back. That's when it happened. One of the men stepped into a trench. A sickening crunch echoed through the trees, followed by a scream of agony. Another one tried to run, only to fall into a second trap, impaled on a stake. The 3rd tripped and rolled in, shattering his leg. They screamed, and that was their mistake. Rosa grabbed my hand, and we darted back through the grass, vanishing into the night. Their cries didn't stop. The forest answered. 10 zombies emerged from the shadows, drawn by the sounds of pain and blood. We didn't move, didn't breathe, just watched, hidden behind the walls of our refuge as the undead descended on them. The screaming turned to gurgles, then silence. We stood guard in shifts for 3 days, not a word spoken, barely moving, waiting until the last of the zombies wandered off. When we were certain it was over, we went out. Some of the infected had fallen into the same trenches, snarling up at us with broken bones and twitching jaws. We ended them quietly with spears to the head. Then we burned the bodies, zombies and men alike. We didn't cheer, we didn't cry, but something in us changed. We had become warriors, not by choice but by necessity. Warriors not just against the undead, but against the worst of humanity. Our food was stable, the well hadn't run dry, the garden flourished, and the watchtower gave us vision in every direction. We had survived again, and now we were stronger than ever. 3 days after the ambush, just as the sun began its slow climb behind the trees, we saw movement near the outer fence again. It was the boys. They hadn't run off after all. We spotted them standing far off, just beyond the line of traps. Their bodies were stiff, hesitant, but they held something above their heads, a torn piece of white cloth fluttering gently in the morning breeze. A flag of peace. They didn't speak, just stood there, watching us, waiting. We gathered behind the fence, silent, every breath held, no weapons raised, but no one let go of them either. Everyone was tense. The boys slowly stepped forward, not too close, stopping at a respectful distance. Then one of them raised his hands and gestured. Simple signs, a wave, a point to his heart, a downward motion showing they had no intention to harm. Rosa looked at me. I nodded. We stepped out, machetes in hand, cautious but calm. As we approached, the boys began to remove their shirts and jackets, laying them on the ground to show they had no weapons. They stood barefoot in the soft grass, arms slightly out to the side, like they were saying, "See? Nothing to hide." Their eyes held fear, but not the kind we were used to, not the cruel kind that masks deception. It was the fear of being turned away, of starving, of being alone. Rosa and I reached them slowly, close enough to speak. I kept my voice low. "Why are you back?" The eldest boy, maybe 16, stepped forward. He had a thin face, sunburnt, lips cracked. "There's 10 of us," he said. "All kids. The 4 men. They weren't with us originally. They found us, took us, used us." His voice trembled slightly. "They tied us up, left us near roads to draw out the infected. Said they'd kill us if we didn't obey." The younger 2 stayed quiet, glancing around nervously. "When you freed us," the boy continued, "we went back to where we hid the others. We've been in the woods, hungry. We don't know where to go. We just want to survive. Same as you." I studied him, looked into his eyes. There was no malice there, just tiredness, just a child forced into the world's worst nightmare. "We can't take you in," I said softly. "Not now. It's too risky. We have to think this through. Come back in 3 days." He nodded without protest. "We understand." I signaled to Guillermo, who'd been watching from the tower. He climbed down and returned minutes later with a small bundle, 3 bottles of clean water and a few boiled potatoes wrapped in cloth. I handed it to the boys. "Take this, for now." Their faces lit up, not with smiles, just silent, wide-eyed gratitude, the kind that runs deep, real. The boys bowed their heads slightly, turned, and walked back the way they came. No words, no looking back, just quiet steps into the tall grass. We watched them disappear into the trees. Back inside the fence, no one said anything for a while, but I could feel it in the air, an invisible pull between what was safe and what was right. 3 days. That's what we had. 3 days to decide if we'd open our home or close it forever. Everyone was on edge. Letting in 10 more people? It was too risky. No one wanted to say it out loud, but I could see it in their eyes. Fear, uncertainty. What if it was a trap? What if they brought danger with them? I felt the same. But I also remembered the old prison. It wasn't far. Hidden behind thick woods and an overgrown trail, the structure was still standing, fenced, secure. We hadn't touched it since the outbreak, but the last group who occupied it told us only 2 zombies were inside. That was all we knew. We never checked ourselves. I brought it up to the group. Everyone listened in silence, then slowly nodded. No one liked the idea, but it was a compromise. Food, water, and shelter for the new group, without risking our own safety. "We'll provide food, water, and a radio," I said, "but they'll have to clear it." When the boys returned 3 days later, 7 more came with them, just as they said. They stood in the open, no weapons, hands visible, tired, hungry, but respectful. Rosa and I went out again. We brought them food we had prepared, boiled roots, dried meat, and clean water. They bowed their heads and thanked us again and again. The oldest one, his voice cracked with emotion, said, "We're sorry we keep asking. You didn't have to help us, but you did." I spoke softly, just loud enough for their group to hear. "There's an old prison not far from here. We believe there are only 2 zombies inside, but we can't be certain. The bandits who took it before said it was clear except for 2. That's all we know." Their faces turned grim. Some looked at each other. Some looked at the ground. "It's a risk," I continued, "but it's shelter. If you want it, we'll show you the boat and how to get there, but we can't promise anything." They didn't hesitate long. "We trust you," one of the girls said quietly. We led them to the boat we used across the creek. I walked them through the path, marked it on a scrap of paper, and explained the safest route. Before they left, I repeated myself. "Even if it's clear, never be loud. Never draw attention. Always assume there's more nearby." They nodded, every one of them, and then they left. That evening, 6 hours passed. Then, just as the sun dipped behind the trees, the radio crackled. "Hello? Hello? Can you hear us?" It was them. "We're inside," the voice whispered. "You were right, only 2. We cleared it. We're safe. We have beds, running water. Thank you. Thank you so much." We could hear the others in the background. Soft laughter, relief, gratitude. I pressed the radio and spoke back. "I'm glad you made it. But remember, always stay quiet. Keep your lights low. Stay alert. Don't let your guard down." "Understood," they answered. Since then, we've kept in contact. Short updates, supply reports, health checks. 2 groups, both safe, both surviving, both with food, water, and now, hope. The days that followed the radio transmission felt like a dream we were too afraid to wake from. Every morning I would wake up expecting it to be gone, that voice from the radio, the message of hope, but it remained, clear, reassuring, a signal from the world we thought we had lost. This is the United Southeast Safe Zone Authority. If you are hearing this, please know, government relief is underway. Recovery units have been deployed. You are not alone. I froze when I first heard it. My hands were trembling as I held the radio close to my ear. For a moment, I couldn't speak. I just stared ahead, mouth slightly open, breath held. Rosa was beside me. "What is it?" she asked, her voice quiet, afraid. I looked at her, wide-eyed, voice shaking as I whispered, "The government! They're out there! They're coming!" My husband came running when he heard. He didn't say a word. He just grabbed me and pulled me into a tight hug, burying his face in my shoulder. I felt his chest rise and fall, shaking as he held back tears. "Do you think it's real?" my brother asked, his voice uncertain. He stood beside our parents, who were both silent, staring at the small, buzzing radio like it was a miracle. My father, who had barely spoken in days, finally whispered, It has to be. We made it this far. Maybe this is why. My mother placed her hand gently over his. For the first time in so long, I saw her smile. Later that day, we shared the news with the group in the old prison through the radio. The static-filled silence on the other end was quickly broken by cheering, crying, and laughter. It was like something inside all of us had cracked open, grief and relief flooding out in waves. That night, around a small fire, we didn't talk about escape plans or defense strategies. We talked about gardens, about rebuilding homes, about roads being cleared and new shelters. My brother even joked about starting a small bakery once everything was safe. Our mother laughed until her eyes welled with tears. The stars above looked the same as they always had, but something had changed in us. We were no longer just surviving. We were waiting for rescue, for reconnection, for a second chance. We didn't know what the world would look like when we stepped back into it, but we knew we wouldn't face it alone. And for the first time in a long, long time, we were hopeful. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe for more stories like this.